to the plenary room. Thank you very much for joining. We have like 3 minutes until the live streaming starts. How long do you have? Okay, it already started, so welcome everybody here in this room, but also out in the World Wide Web to the plenary session of the International Superblock meeting. Today we convene to talk about urban actors and actions, how transition happens in practice. We have an esteemed panel here that we will invite up on the stage into our parklet. And first, some ideas, what are we going to talk about tonight. We will look into how urban transformation can happen, how superblocks can be a strategy to transform cities. We will talk about how you can implement large-scale projects. We will not only talk about superblocks, but also familiar projects, traffic circulation plans, district circulation plans, etc. But they all have in common that they are quite large-scale interventions that will require a lot of different actors to come together to collaborate, and we will talk about the experiences of those transformation projects in action, and also on advices how challenges can be overcome. So what brings us together today? It's the Tune Our Block project, which I'm a part of with our company Loud. The Tune Our Block is a 3-year research and innovation project with the long title Transforming Urban Quarters to Human-Scale Environments, applying superblock concepts for different urban structures. And of course, I'm only the voice now for the consortium, which consists of partners from 3 European countries, from the Vienna University of Technology, from the Austrian Institute of Technology, the City of Vienna, our office Loud, from the NGO Smarter Than Car, the German Institute of Urbanistics, the Research Center for Sustainability at the Helmholtz Center Potsdam, and the NGO Changing Cities from Berlin, and the Research Center at the Slovenian Academy of Sciences. So let's have a brief moment. I want to ask all my colleagues from the Tune Our Block Consortium to reveal yourselves, to stand up, because that would be weird if it's only me speaking for the project. So after the event, you can also approach them and talk to various different aspects. But thank you very much. And also thanks to our funders. The project is funded within the call JPI Urban Europe. In Austria, the partners are funded by the Federal Ministry for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology, which is also our host tonight. Also, thank you for that. The German Ministry for Education and Research, and the Slovenian Research Agency. And this brings us also to our first speaker. Basically, our host will have a talk now by Wiebke Unbehaun. She is the head of department for the Department of Active Mobility and Mobility Management at the Federal Ministry for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology. And she will give us a big picture about what the bigger context for such urban transformations can be. So I would ask Wiebke to come on stage.
Okay, so I'm really happy to welcome you here in the Ministry for Climate Action. I keep it with a short name because the rest is so long, and I think this is the most important part of the name. I'm very impressed to see so many people here in the room today, so many institutions that are working for our cities, for urban transformation, for making our cities more livable places, more climate friendly and more climate resilient. I would like to congratulate you to your project. Actually, I got a very short briefing by Florian and Uli, so I have a broad impression impression of what you did there. So I hope that your results will find a fruitful ground and quite a lot of followers that are implementing your ideas, that are learning from your suggestions, your solutions. And as you probably know, and that's now I'm coming to my speech, is that in Austria, cities and municipalities, and to some extent the federal states, are responsible for defining principles for their city planning, their region planning in the regions, and nearly all strategies and strategic instruments are laid there. So, and this is why very often the questions occur, why is a federal ministry, why is the national level is dealing with the public space, which is in the responsibility of the cities and municipalities, and what role can the national level play within there. So here a broad overview over some strategic instrument, and in the middle with a German name, unfortunately, but it's the Mobility Master Plan for Austria with a target for 2030. And it's a very important strategic document because it defines quite ambitious objectives for mobility transition to reach climate neutral mobility until 2040 at least. And you have here also some other strategic documents where we try to give a strategic framework to the municipalities and the regions with our master plan walking and the master plan for cycling. In both documents and in the framework document of the Mobility Master Plan for Austria, we have, as I already said, ambitious targets. We want to increase cycling up to a nationwide level of 13%. That sounds not so much. So we have certain municipalities, they are already above this objective, but we have very many regions and municipalities, they are far away from that. And we want to reach a share of all trips in walking of 22% until 2040. So, and you will probably see in, I think it's a red marked sentence, the Superblock concept is also mentioned in our Mobility Master Plan, so it's not new for us. We know that the major action need to take place on the municipality level. You have other concepts in our master plan for mobility 2030, like cities with short different distances, the 15-minute city, and quite a lot of measures to avoid motorized transport that lead to more active mobility, to shorter distances, to reduce pressure, the pressure to use cars. So we're quite in the field that you have been working on in the last years. So what can we do from the nation side is that we decided to support initial activities in the field of fostering walking, cycling, and as well the urban transition to make cities more livable. And therefore we launched a funding program in which we can provide up to 50% of funding for projects, for cycling infrastructure for walking, but also for mobility management and guiding activities that improve the quality of public space, with the idea that walking and cycling should be given equal rights and equal consideration in policy and planning. So here you see a chart on how much our budgets increased within the last years. So we started with a very low budget of 4.5 million euros with our former government. With our new government, walking and cycling become much more powerful within the national policy. So we increased our budget up to 95 million for the funding period of this year. That means also that the municipalities need to have strong efforts to improve walking and cycling so that we can spend all this money. Otherwise, it goes back to the Ministry of Finance, and we can't save it for the next years. So please talk to the people, convince them that it is useful to improve infrastructure for walking and cycling in the urban space, because we convince the Ministry for Finance that it is a good thing to do. And now it's your part to convince the cities and the municipalities that they go this way with us. Here is a brief review on what we did last year. So we had a budget there of almost 70 million euros. And we spent quite a lot of money for investments in walking and cycling. So about 40 million euros to improve cycling infrastructure, to extend cycling infrastructure, more than 21 million euros to build or to support the building, the establishment of pedestrian infrastructure. As I already said, it is a kind of a co-funding scheme, so we triggered about 180 million euros investment in walking and cycling infrastructure all over the country. What else did we do? So with this investment or with this funding, we expect that we can realize 190 kilometers of cycling infrastructure within the next years, only with this budget. And you know, we have a new funding period now, and we supported the provision of another 1,000 cycle stands for bicycle parking, and we funded for private persons and companies and communities about 9,600 bicycles. But funding is not everything, so because we know money is not everything, and only the infrastructure is very often not enough. So either we need to convince municipalities to invest in the infrastructure, but also we must make sure that also the citizens are aware that walking and cycling is a good mode of transport and that it's useful to give it a try, to leave the car in the garage and jump on the bicycle or start walking. That's why we have strong efforts in the field of awareness raising and campaigning, education and training, especially for young school students. We offered about 4,500 cycle classes this year. We invest quite a lot of efforts in improving the norms, the standards, and the legislation in the context of walking and cycling. These strategic documents are already mentioned, and I think one of the biggest effort is the cross-sectoral cooperation and multi-level governance. So when we are talking to the federal states and the municipalities, to convince them that it is worth to invest in walking and cycling. Yeah, and now I'm coming to my end, or the end of my short welcome. I'm happy to see you here, and I hope that you will have another fruitful conference with a lot of new insights. And I'm happy to see that we are co-partners in fostering walking and cycling to bring quite a lot of other persons and institutions on the way for active mobility, climate-friendly mobility, and urban transformation. Thank you very much, and a great day.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is really encouraging to see that there is so much financial support. So now we just need to get those projects out. And to simply get those projects out, there are certain challenges and complications that you need to overcome before something is built. So tonight we'll also talk about what is it actually when we talk about urban transformation, you know, like what is being transformed, or what are the the benchmarks that you want to reach? What are the different visions that people have? You know, what do you understand as your goal? What sort of new uses do you bring in? How can you convince other people to be on board? How can you make teams of champions to stand behind your projects and to stick with those projects, like the glue people that stick with those projects? And I just briefly, as a sort of a starting point for the discussion, because we are talking about Superblocks, I wanted to present one of the key results of the Tune Our Block project. It's our definition that we worked out with a European, but actually more than European-wide panel of experts of a mainstreamed or generalized definition of the Superblocks concept, that Superblocks enable urban sustainability transitions by strategically reducing motor vehicle through routes. So this is the common denominator, converting the city into a mosaic of human-scale neighborhoods where walking and cycling is key, without motor vehicle through traffic, and redesigning public space within neighborhoods to provide active mobility, climate adaptation, local environmental quality, and inclusive public social life. That sounds very compact, but it can make projects really complex and interesting and challenging, but also worth doing, we believe, at least in the consortium, and also today in the morning we had a peer group meeting already, and there were some really inspiring and encouraging ideas there already. And tonight we're going to do one thing, that we invite members of our peer group and invited guests to come up on stage, but the stage is actually, there is something here that was provided by one of our members, by the NGO Smarter Than Car. It's called Parklet to Go, and what STC does with this is to go out in street space and just come by a bike and set it up and then talk to people, and that's pretty much what we are going to do tonight. And I'm very lucky to have two members of the Tune Our Block peer group with me tonight, so I don't have to moderate on my own, but they will help me tonight to navigate this whole complexity. It's Josie and Wim, and I first want to call up Josie Besselink. She's a senior urban planner at the City of Rotterdam and an esteemed member of our peer group, and she will take the perspective, like Josie and Wim, they will take each a perspective and reflect on all the other presentations from this perspective. Josie chose to look at how pilots and experimentation can happen in a successful way while being part of a wider planning strategy. So let's give Josie a hand and she will give a brief introduction.
Thank you for having me. Yes. Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. My name is José. I'm an urban planner working for the City of Rotterdam in the field of active travel, mobility related to public space and health. Rotterdam is the second biggest city in the Netherlands. My colleague from Amsterdam is here as well. And today, since I have a short time, I wanted to briefly share some key takeaways that I had from joining this peer group Tune Our Block related to my work in experience in Rotterdam. First of all, in my opinion, policy is key. In Netherlands, we kind of are a planning paradise. We have policy documents for everything. But still, I do believe this is a very important framework to set the agenda, in this case on public space, on mobility, on health. And we have seen a paradigm shift occurring in our policy documents where we are now putting the pedestrians and the cyclists on top of this pyramid. And we see things happening in the city. We see actually things happening and we do deliver projects. Over the past decade or so, the city has invested a lot in better public space, more green, wider sidewalks, more bike paths. And this is just, well, an overview of some of those projects. But if we want to make this mobility transition actually happen, experiments and pilots can be a tool, because we cannot always afford to permanently invest in those public space projects. So the city also decided to start a tactical intervention program, but pilots are never an end on itself. And this is the second takeaway that I wanted to share with you. It's crucial to always relate those pilots and experiments that we are doing to these long-term ambitions and strategies, so it becomes a tool in your planning process, instead of just a nice party on the street that you see on the left side, which was an interesting project that we did, but it only happened once. And the lessons we learned there is we should always connect to the next step that we can take, that we are able to take. And if so, urban transformation can happen both on street, the left-hand side where you see lots of parklets that we had there that were transformed into permanent green areas, but also into bike parking. And the bike parklet is one of the successful interventions that we did in our city. Used it as an instrument to permanently create proper bike parking facilities, but it also became a part of our planning policy. So to me, it's very important to always loop back into that policy level, so you can actually institutionalize this way of working. And in the end, it's all about creating happy faces, like with these children, on a flying grass carpet that was landed in the city center. That was my brief introduction.
Thank you very much. So please have a seat in the parklet to go, and I'm asking Wim Schudding up to the stage. He works for the city of Ghent at the Ghent's mobility company, and he's our second perspective on why open dialogue and tactical flexibility matter.
Thank you, Florian. Thank you all for having me. Just like this. No, that's where I start my story. It's just a brief overview, and I'm always combining two pictures, before and after a certain kind of city transformation. So the small picture is just Google Street View 2009, so not so long ago. It's really in the very core of our city, and there was just a parking space. And now you see the same space. It's with greenery, people like to sit there. But this was not the original plan, actually. The original plan of brilliant urban planners was to build a bigger parking garage underneath. But then people disagreed and they complained a lot. There was even a referendum and the parking garage was voted away, so it was back to the drawing board. And that comes to my first point that I want to share with you, is that if you're being criticized, it can be annoying, but sometimes it can be helpful as well, because if you listen to your citizens, they might have some interesting things to say, like here. So I'm very happy that there was never a parking garage, but it was this. So two things. It's important to have good plans, but it's also important to look around, see what's happening, and change your plans if it's necessary, to be flexible and to go in dialogue with the people in your city. So that's what we've been trying to do with failures and successes. It all started, let's say, like in many cities, that we had a pedestrian area. It was installed in 97, before and after. So it was a big success, but as many cities, growing, more people, more cars, more bikes, whatever, more pedestrians. So in the same space, it becomes a problem. And then at a certain point, we estimated that there was too much through traffic going straight through the city, and we thought, what if we could prevent that through traffic? Could we create more space? And that was the basis for a plan 20 years later. There was the circulation plan, which some of you may have heard of. So it was basically doubling the size of the pedestrian area that was already existing and creating 6 zones around it. And it made it impossible for motorized traffic to go from one zone to another. You have to use the city ring road every time. So this was a plan that was more or less top-down approach. We communicated. There was a big complaints, of course, but we used it as a starting point to ask for feedback to improve the plan. So that was one phase, and then we had some temporary public spaces that we want to change after. But you see, before and after, it's exactly the same, and the complete renewal is scheduled for within a year or two. We didn't stop there, so it was a big fuss in our city, a lot of problems, but our vice mayor, he stood his ground, and he was awarded big time by the elections. So that's a thing, you can win elections with bold plans. That's interesting. So afterwards he said, well, it's not enough to do these kinds of things in the city center. You have to look in the districts around the city center as well. So he was very bold and ambitious. He wanted to implement 7 of those district mobility plans, we call it. Why didn't we call it circulation plans? Well, because sometimes terms get contaminated by the negative criticism. So you always have to try to reinvent your narrative to start a conversation with your citizens. And so we also changed the approach. It was no longer top-down. This is our plan, help us to improve it, but it was really like, what are the problems that you witness in your own neighborhood, and what are the ideas? And from that, bottom up, we came up with a plan. But I can assure you that at a certain point, you decide on a plan, and then the criticism starts all over again. So you have to be ready for that. So the opposition was different, the context was different. They gave a lot of legal issues, and we lost a lot of time. But finally, I'm very happy to say this, that last month and today, the 2 first plans on a big scale were actually implemented. So I'm very happy that we got results before the elections, because we have elections, local elections in October, and then what's next? Interesting to say is that there is a lot of fuss about all these plans, but there is a growing common goals, let's say, even with political parties. They say, yes, we all want better quality of life in neighborhoods. Yes, we all want more traffic safety. We all like more green in the public space. We all like accessibility for everybody. The discussion is about how are you going to achieve those goals, and then parties can change their meanings. So I think it's an ongoing search on the best methods to achieve those goals, and it shouldn't be necessarily a Superblock or a circulation plan or whatever. There are many roads that lead to the ultimate goal, and also on many scales. You know, you can do some small scale pilot projects in school neighborhoods, for example. You can also try to use, starting from a renewal of a city part, like the pictures on the right, to do it the way you want to do it. So you see only a picture of 2022, but the picture above was full of cars. It's the same place. And the fact that you can do it is you can show it. And when you go to a different part of your city and you say, what do you want your neighborhood to look like? Do you want it like the picture above, or do you want the other picture? And that is something that can encourage people to choose for that. And we also think maybe even on a regional schedule, on a regional scale, we can try to avoid through traffic. But see in the title, it's a lot of question marks. So we'll see what the future brings, but there are many roads to achieve those goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can. So thank you. Keep in mind reflection on the next 4 talks. What we do next is we have 4 talks: Barcelona, London, Berlin, Vienna. And after each talk, we have time for 1 to 3 questions, depends on the timing of the speakers, and also reflections. And then in the end, we use the remaining time for a brief Q&A before we go out, and there might be some buffet left, or maybe new liquids for everybody, but we'll see. So we are very happy to have the next speaker here in Vienna. It's also a member of the Superblock peer group. It's Ariadna Miguel Amengual. She's the Director of Urban Strategy for the city of Barcelona. And she will talk about the, of course, Barcelona Superblock, aka Superia project. Let's give her a round of applause. I'll give you this mic.
Yeah. Thank you. I am Arianna. I am working in the City Council since 2007, and I was implementing Superblocks since 2012. So I live all the evolution of the projects and how it's developed. And the changes that I will try to speak, to speak in 10 minutes, I think. This is Barcelona. The city has been, has been growing, and now is the city that we have now, the city of the 21st city, is that metropolitan city, that it's composed by 36 cities of different colors, political colors, and I think that the most important challenge that we have is how to look at this metropolitan scale, because most of the problems that we have, that housing problems or also mobility problems and health problems, cannot be solved if we don't look about that metropolitan scale. But Barcelona, that it's our city, and it's my field of work, the municipality, it's very dense, It has 10 districts, but 1.6 inhabitants in 100 square kilometers, so the public space is so dense. So it's the other challenge that we have, how to adapt that public space that is so dense and so stressed to deal the new climate conditions, that we know that we will have that heat waves and also that heavy droughts that we have now. And that's why we are working, redefining urban quality and adapting the existing city. It's our commitment now. Superblock concept is one of the projects that we are carrying, to have these two goals. And why we are using that concept in our city, because Barcelona is made of streets. We have a lot of streets. We don't have a very big park, so we need the streets to have more and to increase that public space. So Superblocks is a project that could work in that way. We began to work in public space since the 80s, and the improving public space was like a tool thought to reduce inequalities in the city. We use the same quality in the city center as in the peripheries, to reduce these social inequalities. That's why our public space is very. It's like a very prized good, a common good. And every action that we are making in the public space is very contested, and it's very popular. We began to remove cars and to gain that public space in the old urban tissues. And then, in the 2015 and 2000, we began to implement Superblocks outside these old urban tissues. No? We know how to remove cars in a narrow streets. There's no problem with that. But yes, it was a problem, no? In a Eixample grid, no? With wide streets like Poblenou or Sant Antoni. The first experience that we have made was that Poblenou, no? That is well known. These are the first actions, no? That were temporary during 2 weeks. And after that, that urban furniture was removed, and we built that tactical urbanism that it was very polemic at the beginning. After that, we have built the Sant Antoni with the Sant Antoni Superblock with a different scope. No? As you can see, the ambit is all the neighborhood, no? And we learn some lessons from the Poblenou, and we focus on benefits, no? On the green streets that we are winning, no? And we have done that kind of urbanization, the classical one, but also tactical one, with a lot of participation. After that, 4 years later, 4 or 5 years later, we know that it works, no? Because we have data. And we know that we are winning that space, but also we have a car reducing in the whole neighborhood. And we also have reducing the pollution, and also we don't have problems with retail, no? Because we have the maximum opposition with the retailers, we know, no? Each time that we have, no, we are making that projects, we have that problems, no? So it was a time to have that city vision and to extend, no, all that policy to the whole city, and to have that vision like a green infrastructure, and to thought where it's more necessary to be implemented. That was the time to implement it in the city center, no, in the whole city center, that is the Eixample, the most part of the city, that is the economical core of the city, and it's the most polluted, and we have that, no, we know that there are a lot of through traffic passing through, and we know that it's a part that it's easy to access in public transport, so we have that opportunity to implement that Superblocks concept in a little bit different way, no? More focus on the green streets, not on separated ambits. And this is the image that we have made for all this big city center, no? We want to build that 21 streets and 21 plazas that in the past 2 years, we will build only that 4 streets, no? That was the last action that we have constructed. No, we have made in 2 years. We have made that streets that are 4.65 kilometers of green streets. So it's a big project in the core of the city. That it was very polemic. Also the project. We have made a competition to build and to imagine what would like, no, that new model of street, and this is the kind of a street that we have implemented, this shared space, no, that I think that the most radical change, no, was to convert that junction in a new square, no, that we don't have. We didn't used to have in the Eixample, no? We know, here we have a photo. And how was it possible, no? How we were organized to make that change, so big change, in 2 years. We built that Superblock technical office. Well, we virtual built. We need a leadership and a political vision, that it was by a chief architect, then an office coordinator that has to coordinate all that of the municipal department, and also the responsibles of the teams that are won the competition, and all the municipal departments that are acting in the public space, like mobility, but also the firemen, the police, no, or the cleaning and maintenance, no, to have and to work together to have that goal. Also, we have an advisory board with external experts, and then a very huge effort to do participation with a small group, no, to promote all the actions, but also to have open sessions, also to have the new technologies, participatory tools, sectorial meetings. Participation was very, very important. As you know, after building that project, come the elections, and the current government lost the elections. So we learn some lessons too, no? Political will, as Josie said, no, is very important, that policies and that future vision. Also, to explain why you are doing that, I think that it's very important to explain what you are provoking these changes, no, that the people don't want. And for us, it was useful to use health, not climate change, because it's closer for people, to have flexibility, participation, to have data, to have time, no? And maybe make the changes at the beginning of the mandate, no? Because we need time to decide if it's working or not, that project. And the last lesson, no, is how to convert that political project in a citizen project, no? That I think that it's I don't know if it's possible, no? But I think that this is not half done in the city of Barcelona. That's why now we have stopped on this project. We are not working more for the moment. We are evaluating. And now we are working on all that space that is not a street, no? Because we are still having that lack of green space. Our city is made by 30% of the city is made by streets. The 25% is buildings. So we have more or less one of the third part of the city. There are spaces between blocks, in the interior blocks. So we are putting in value, no, that kind of space. So this is our current project. And the other project that we are working also is that capitality that will be held in Barcelona 2026, where I hope that you will come to visit, and I hope that we will talk about, no, these challenges that has the cities now. Thank you. I don't know.
Thank you very much, Ariadna. If you just join us in the, I'm a very bad host. I didn't give you anything to drink yet. Let's just put a whole, that's for you guys. And we also have some glasses. Do you have some immediate reactions? And we have time for 1 or 2 questions from the audience. You can also let it sit, and we can take it as a part of the Q&A in the end. But if there is an immediate question from the audience, as long as we, there's some.
I will keep the mic. Okay. Okay. Your last learning was city project, not political project. The way I understood it, there was before it was called Superblocks. There was already some sort of urban transformation that was framed like, I think it was like getting the village in the city, which was more like a conservative framed transformation, and then it was called Superblocks, which was more left-wing framing, but it was similar. Is that correct, or can you explain what's the difference, or are there really such big differences between the left-wing and conservative policies?
Yeah, no. I began to work in Superblocks with the right party in the city government. That's the first my first contact with Superblocks as a technician of the municipality. So it's not so different. But the last mandate, the Superblocks was like the flagship project. I think that Superblocks is a project that is over the table since 2000 in the city. So all the parties has followed that project. It's true that the party that has been more brave with that project is the left party, that the one that has lost the last election. And in the last mandate, after Poblano and after the success of Sant Antoni, they picked the project as a flagship project, and all the project has the label of Superblocks. And I think we as a technicians, we weren't agree about that, because we didn't like to make so much noise, and so political issue, with that, because we don't need that, But they want to have that, and I think that it was a mistake, or maybe you can start with that political push or will, but then you have to talk with all the stakeholders to bring it together, and then to maybe reduce the ambition of your vision, and to make in order to all the stakeholders can feel that the project is from together. I don't know. And I think that it's something that it has not made in that case. But I think that it's so difficult because you need so much political push. So it's not easy, after that to make, to be beside, and not in the front. It's not easy for a politician, I think. I don't know if more or less.
I think this is really good insights. That's we have a chance tonight to hear about the project, but from directly, and that's very interesting. Is there brief remarks from you guys?
I have a question if there is time. No, what struck me as being part of this peer group of different cities is that the results of the pilot project and then the more permanent results are very similar, but the reasons why to start with it are very different. As I told in Ghent, mobility is really the way to go. We want to make it safer for traffic, etc. I heard in Poland it was about making sure that people wanted to live in a neighborhood, and how can you do that? And I hear from you that it was health as the main goal, which from my city, of course it's an excellent reason, but it was never the issue. So my question is a little bit, how do you come from that main goal to create, let's say, a more holistic approach that you enter all those other goals and topics, because in the end it's also a mobility project and it's also about climate change, and it seems like a big leap to me from experience. So how did you manage to get all those different topics together in one big Superblock project? It's maybe a very difficult question or an easy one. Up to you.
Yes, it's a difficult question, but I think that public space is a space that, at least in Barcelona, and in our Mediterranean culture, we use a lot our public space, and I think that it's easy to have this holistic approach through the public space, through how the citizenship is using that public space, no? And if you use for parking, or if you use for making your birthday party, of your son's birthday party, no? And I think that the uses of the public space, no? How are we using that common good that we have, no? It's a good, yes, a good issue, no? To develop all the different things, no? Because you have socioeconomic aspects also, you have health aspects, you have conflicts also, no? So you have a lot of things, no? Democratic aspects also, no? So that are happening in the public space. I think that that's why, no? It's a way to have that holistic approach, no?
Yeah, thank you. Josie?
I was wondering, in the presentation of the Ministry of Austria, she was referring to a national master plan on walking, on cycling. And in your presentation, you said the metropolitan scale is becoming more important. How do you deal with finding maybe new coalitions or collaborations with other governance levels?
Yeah, that's the issue that we are trying to focus on the last 10 years or more. I think that since I work in the municipality, that plan, or that metropolitan plan, is being is in works, no? So we have a metropolitan government that it's formed by all the cities, but it has a political weight, it's not a hard political way. And also it's not in the mind of the citizens, no? That region, that metropolitan city, we feel as we live in Barcelona or Badalona, but no, we are in the same continuous, no? Because the city is the same, and you cross the street and you are in another city, and you don't feel that you are in the same city. So it's not easy to build coalitions with the other municipalities. I've never talked with the Hospitalet municipality. That is no. So I think that is a culture that we have to build to that, no, to collaborate together, that it's not built. And that's why, no, the metropolitan area has to have more political weight. And I think that government that stops superblocks is a bad thing, yeah, or is thinking about superblocks. But I think that they want to achieve that collaboration with the municipalities of the surroundings. So I think that it's a good news. And I think that it's a good scope, no? Because the most important problems has to be solved inside this collaboration, no? So I hope that we will make more strong coalitions in the future.
Yeah, great. It's also a topic, I think, in many cities, but it's always great to hear that even cities that are really known for their lighthouse projects still have challenges. So a final question for Ariadna. I'm sorry, we have only one question left at this time.
Thank you for getting this precious time. Thank you, Ariadna, also for sharing your long experience in this case. I would be interested in the data, because you mentioned that we know now it works because we have the data and it was in your final list, but also from my experience, often these debates are super polarized and it's not really about the, let's say, sober data and so on, but the arguments on the political level are very different, and it's more about party politics or emotional storytelling and so on. So I would be very interested in which difference the data did make for you?
If I understood, no, what are the data that help us, no, to make that switch? Yes, it's like that. Make the difference. Yeah, I think that it was for us, it was very useful, the data, because there was a lot of perceptions that were not true, and we could demonstrate that with data. Even with data, some people don't believe us, but at least we have data. So for us, it's very important to evaluate and to measure that it's not cheap. You have to invest money, at least in Barcelona. And in the last project, we have to make a project and build a project before the transformation, in order to have data before the transformation, that it's not used. We weren't used to make it like that. I think that the data makes a difference. That the number of cars that are because the idea is you are removing the cars from the one street to another, to that data. It's very it's like crucial to have it, and we know not the year after doing the transformation, but 2 years later, we know that it has decreased, and we have the data, and we could explain that, and that helped us a lot. It's easy, that data.
Not only in your own city, but it was also used in Vienna in the process of discussing the project. So, yeah, thank you very much. We'll leave it for Barcelona for now, and we talked about elections before, and you know that this Thursday there is an election in London. So I'm very happy, we are very happy as a consortium that our next speaker could or made time to come to Vienna in such a dense time. Our next speaker is Clyde Lokes. He's a deputy council leader in the London Borough of Waltham Forest, and he will tell us about how they implemented a lot of low traffic neighborhoods over the last 10 years. So let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so let's get the skeleton out of the closet. I am a politician, so I do apologise now in case I disappoint. Waltham Forest, for those of you who don't know, London is one of the 32 London boroughs. I guess districts is probably a similar comparison to you in Austria. Waltham Forest is an outer London borough. There are 22 outer London boroughs, so they tend to be more suburban, higher levels of car ownership compared to the inner London boroughs. We link Essex on the outside of London with London, and we technically inner London kind of housing, tenure and population demographics in the south of the borough, going to kind of more traditional affluence, suburban co-owning in the north of the borough. It's a very complicated borough, but that's what it looks like. It's a population of roughly about 280,000 people currently. Well, it was when I left yesterday, 280,000 people. Could be a bit more now. 10 years ago, we secured a vast figure of money from the then Mayor of London, someone whose name you all know. He became our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, let's get it out there. Not my party, but he was and is a very keen cyclist. And he wanted to get more people out of their cars in outer London, and to cycle, and he created this program called Mini Holland. Very flattering to the Dutch in the room. Someone talked earlier about the toxicity of titles of things. Mini Holland didn't go down too well with lots of our residents, so we quickly changed it to Enjoy, which is a little bit better. So he wanted to get more people walking and cycling more often, especially their local trips. We initially talked mostly about cycling because we thought everyone wanted to cycle. We quickly rolled back from that and we started framing it around active travel, so more people walking and cycling. We had a number of village concepts. We started off, we called our Superblocks villages. Walthamstow village was the first one. We don't call them villages anymore. We then moved them into livable neighbourhoods, and we now call them low-traffic neighbourhoods. They're called low-traffic neighbourhoods now. But this was the first one. A residential area designed by the Victorians. Been in place for a long time. Conservation area in the middle of it. Small shopping. And you can see a before and after picture. Had around about 3,000 vehicle movements a day. Two-way traffic, as you can see, it was pretty tight. People just used to disregard the double yellow lines and just park on the pavements. We took all of that out by using modal filters in the surrounding residential streets. And we created the other picture that you can see with lots of planting, pedestrian priority, cycling priority, and it's now a destination. People come from across London to this location. Prior to that, people would leave our borough and go and spend their money in other parts of London. So we talk around outcomes. People would rather spend their money and their time in streets that look like that than ones that are filled with cars. So yes, there are health benefits. Yes, there are active travel benefits. Yes, there are climate benefits. There are also economic benefits as well for doing these really positive interventions in our local neighbourhoods, particularly those with traditional small shopping parades. And of course, since the COVID pandemic, you know, shopping local, working more from the home has become a more normal thing to do. So these kinds of shopping areas have become even more important to our local residents on a day-to-day basis. Our programme was not just around low-traffic neighbourhoods, it was also about building the infrastructure that would enable people to cycle or wheel, perhaps out of the borough and to different parts of our borough. So we've put in a huge amount of separate cycle track, but also reclaiming road space to do that, and at the same time also putting in loads of sustainable urban drainage systems, lots more planting in those spaces. Good for the climate, good for biodiversity, good for flooding issues. We have quite a lot of challenging flooding issues in Waltham Forest as well. We've also used our interventions to get rid of excess parking spaces. We've also used our interventions to get rid of antisocial behaviour, low-level criminal and disruptive activity, a thing called fly tipping. I don't know if you're familiar with it, where people just dispose of their rubbish in the middle of a road late at night, those kind of hotspots as well. And instead, we've, like this particular scene, transformed it into a really interactive kind of low-level play space, surface water draining space, planting space, because it's on a main route to a local primary school for very young children. You know, so previously they would walk down this road and it'd be filled with fly tipping, maybe some low-level drug deals going on at the same time. But now, because we've turned it into this kind of space, they have an interactive space. They enjoy walking to school. And because we've legitimised that kind of activity, we've taken out the fly tipping, we've taken out the low-level criminality as well, and we made it space for people to enjoy. And these are just some of our achievements over the past 10 years. We celebrate 10 years this year. Nearly 50% of our residents now live in a low-traffic neighbourhood. So we've implemented 17 over the past 10 years. Roughly about 90 modal filters have been put in place to enable that to happen. We have 765 bike hangers. It's the second highest number of bike hangers in the UK. We shall have 1,300 by the time I'm next up for election in 2026, because we have 4,000 households on a waiting list. Every time we talk about bike hangers in Waltham Forest, we get a huge influx of people who want a space in a bike hanger. So we have to be really, really careful, but we're trying to meet demand as best we can, and I've secured the funding to enable us to take that up to 1,300 bike hangers. We have lots of school streets. We've planted lots of trees as a consequence of our works. We also do lots of cycle training. We've created lots of walks. We work with our local doctors and health practitioners because we think kind of walking and cycling is really, really good social prescribing activity, particularly for physical and mental health. And we've got some real challenges in our borough in those two particular spaces as well. So we're using it to tick huge numbers of boxes because nice places, positive places, people that prioritise people are the places that people want to stay, and it's the places that they can engage with and they want to be there. And that's really, really important to us. So lots of what we call complementary measures going in as well as infrastructure measures. However, it wasn't all plain sailing. We did a trial, that's the first picture. We put the scheme in permanently. That's what happened with the second picture. That's me being confronted by very emotional residents. Forgive me, we do like a lot of drama, and we do tend to misappropriate historical reference points as well. But yes, the suggestion was a coffin that we were symbolising the death of this particular shopping area. What of course has happened is it's been totally transformed. As I say, it's a destination now. This particular shop, he's still there. He is still there selling vintage furniture. He was out there till the bitter end trying to oppose what we did. And we extended the pavements outside his shop. And boy, does he use that pavement space to sell his products. But if you go in and ask him, he's still against it. But the fact that he's there some 10 years on would suggest that he's making it work for him. But I've been through 2 electoral cycles now. 2018 was probably the main one. And if I believed all the kind of social media in particular, all the loud people, I was going to get voted out. My administration was going to get voted out. And that was that. That'll be the end of Mini Holland Enjoy Waltham Forest. What happened was, got the biggest majority I've ever had. We gained loads of new seats. And we've been in place ever since. The 2022 elections, there wasn't as much noise around this. And actually, we made it part of our manifesto that we would roll out further low-traffic neighbourhoods and do even more in this space. And again, we gained more seats. And yeah, I gained a lot more votes in that one as well. Lots of engagement, though. We talk to people, we engage with people, but we do it at pace. And I think sometimes that's probably one of the big difference between what we've done and perhaps some of the examples that you've been looking at over the past couple of years. Pace for me as a politician is really, really important. I don't want to be navel-gazing endlessly over what I fundamentally believe is the right thing to do. I came into politics to change things, not to manage the status quo. And some of the changes we need to make are massive. If we're to kind of arrest or live with the consequences of climate change, for example. You know, if we're to address some of our appalling health issues that we've got in London, in particular Waltham Forest. So I want to change things and I want to do it at pace. I don't have time to hang around, and lots of my residents don't have time to hang around neither. So we do engage, but we do it at pace, and we adapt and we amend our proposals and our schemes as we go. But actually, because we now have a pretty strong blueprint of the interventions that work well and in what situations, actually a lot of this is now can be done even quicker than it was before. And actually people now come to us to ask us for the interventions that they see in their neighbouring streets. There's nothing like getting good schemes on the ground as an advert, as a way of selling these kinds of interventions. We use a lot of technology as well. Commonplace is the one that we use, where people can express their views, their feelings, what they like, dislike about their particular area, and that starts to kind of inform the way that we want to progress with particular schemes. We work with our communities because we want them to own some of these spaces that we're creating. We don't have the budgets for the council to take on responsibility for extra green spaces, but we know these green spaces are important, so, you know, we work with them, we give them the skills, we give them the plants, you know, we support them in doing it, but we don't take the ownership of these particular places. Lots of stuff goes into supporting some of our local community groups, particularly those who traditionally haven't been into two wheels, shall we say. You know, supporting them to kind of break into some of our newer communities in Waltham Forest, and they're really, really making a difference. Lots of quality public spaces. I think probably the most dramatic one here, and lots of removal of car parking spaces, but this road on the end here, this long straight road, this flooded in 2021. It's basically at the bottom of a hill, at the top of the hill. Everyone's paved over their front gardens to park their cars on. And consequently, when we have some of the really dramatic downpours that we now have in the UK, all the water just overpowers the limited Victorian drainage infrastructure and just comes down the hill and ends up in this particular road. We said to the residents, look, you know, we've got to do something dramatic. Our water companies are never going to build bigger drains, and those drains are never going to be big enough. We can put in, you know, some sustainable urban drainage systems. We can change it. We can introduce porous tarmac onto the road. We can do various things. We can help you break up your concreted little gardens where you just store your bins, just to create those extra bits of permeability. We can give you free water butts. We can do lots of little things that may just make a difference. And when it comes to flooding in your home, literally a millimetre can be the difference between you keeping your home dry and livable for the next 10, 20 years, or having to move out and tens of thousands of pounds worth of damage being done. So they opted to lose all that car parking space and to put in these sustainable urban drainage systems, because you can move a car. You know, you can walk to your car in the neighbouring street, but you can move a car, you can't move your house. And ultimately, it's people's homes that are the most important thing to them. There's one of our cycle hangars. Like I say, we've got 700, nearly 800 of those now. And then there's some cycle hubs that we've been building around all of our stations. We've got those at all of our major transport stations now, train and tube stations. And we're pushing hard on car club membership. Since we started this programme, in the past 7 years, we've seen a 7% decrease in car ownership in Waltham Forest. Just under 50% of households now own a car. So we're now at a tipping point where the majority don't actually have access to their own personal car. And for an outer London borough, with that kind of vision that man whose name I don't want to repeat again started with, you know, is massive transformation. And then the air quality speaks for itself. The lighter the colours, so the one that says 2013 on the far side, that's how we were when it comes to not NO2 emissions. Dark red, really, really bad. Yellow, really, really bad. Light green, really, really bad. We basically 7,000 households out of about 90,000 households at that time that were exposed to illegal levels of NO2 emissions. That's now down to round about 8,000. So, you know, because we've been doing this work to kind of take short car journeys off our local residential streets, and encourage more people to move around in different ways, primarily walking and cycling. And there was some research by one of our universities that said, consequence of this work that we've been doing, babies born since would live at least 6 weeks longer, just because of the air quality and the difference we made in air quality. Obviously, cycling numbers are going through the roof. I think it's about 3% increase in the amount of people that cycle regularly. since we started this program as well. Thank you very much. And any questions?
Thank you, Clyde. This is really impressive on a very local level. I see 2 hands up from the audience. I think we can't take many more questions than those 2 from the audience. Is there any quick remarks from the bench? Okay, let's do audience first. Awesome.
Hi. Do you have any collaborations planned with other boroughs in London, or do you have already any in place?
Okay, so we largely in London, we tend to do things on our own. One of the schemes, low traffic neighbourhood schemes that we put in during the COVID period, we did with our neighbouring borough in the south, which is the London Borough of Newham, because the residential areas, of course, they cross over all the time, but that was a very complicated low traffic neighbourhood that was split over the 2 boroughs. Kind of at a London level, we tried to work together, particularly around kind of lobbying and trying to get changes in legislation. And sometimes that comes down to just the 20-odd Labour-led local authorities, of which I'm one of, in Waltham Forest. So we tried to kind of lobby government, but we know government really doesn't like what we've been doing. Even though that man whose name I'm not going to repeat started this process, and it's still his government that's in charge. The new Prime Minister, well, say new Prime Minister, hopefully the Prime Minister that's soon to go, he really doesn't like what we've been doing. So they've introduced a plan for motorists, because they feel like the motorists is being unjustly challenged, and that kind of driving is a human right, whereas kind of perhaps walking and cycling isn't a human right. Go figure. So, so we work politically as well to try and kind of challenge some of those perceptions. And as was indicated, we've got a really, really important London mayoral election on Thursday, where this kind of agenda is really coming to the fore. With our current mayor, who brought in the ultra-low emission zone, maybe you've heard about that. He's defending that policy. And the main opponent to him, who's part of the party that's in government in the UK, she's announced that she will get rid of it on day 1 if she wins. So it's a really, really big kind of culture war piece of politics that's going on in London. And as soon as I finish here tomorrow, I shall be back into London, back out knocking on doors on Wednesday, trying to get people, progressive people who understand the impact of poor air quality on their children, their grandchildren, on themselves, and people, who want to live in nice places to get them out to the polling stations. And I'll be doing that with lots of other people as well.
With time for one more question.
Thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, you mentioned that there is a big difference between density in the north and the south of your borough. I was wondering if the perception of the population also differs between the north and the south, and how you manage that.
Have you been to my borough? You sound very well informed.
Okay.
In short, yes, it does. So we have a road called the A406, the North Circular, which is pretty much like a ring road that goes across the north of London, that cuts Walthamstow, Leighton and Leytonstone in the south, off from a place called Chingford in the north. Chingford has traditionally still felt that it shouldn't be in London, it should be in Essex. Has never, politically, has never really accepted that it was in London. But that's starting to change. It's starting to change. And we're starting to see some people that are kind of asking for these kind of interventions in the north of the borough now as well. But lots of this intervention, in fact, the vast majority of the interventions I've kind of alluded to are in the middle and south of the borough rather than the north. I mean, in the north of the borough, they even oppose us putting in electrical vehicle charging points. They still haven't quite got their heads around the need to kind of have kind of parking permits as well. So, there's some real kind of big challenges still in the north of the borough.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's give an energizing round of applause to Clyde. And we're very happy as a consortium to have two speakers from Berlin next on the stage. Valentina Haas and Imo Jansen from one of our consortium members, Changing Cities, and I'm very curious to hear like what you guys actually did next to the Tune Our Block project or also overlapping with the Tune Our Block project. It's quite impressive. Let's give them a round of applause.
Hello everyone, thanks for having us. Me and my colleague Imo, we're both part of the NGO Changing Cities. We're based in Berlin. And today I want to tell you the story of ordinary people that decided to transform their city. What's important for you to know, in Berlin we call Superblocks Kiezblocks, and Kiez is just our name for Superblock, for neighborhoods. So for you to understand what we're talking about, I brought you a map of Berlin. Each colored field marks a citizen's initiative for a superblock. And today we have in total 70 initiatives. So how did we get there? In order to understand where Changing Cities comes from, I'm going a bit back in time. It all started in 2016 with a referendum on better bike infrastructure in Berlin. The campaign was incredibly successful, and after only 3 weeks, more than 100,000 signatures were handed over to the Berlin government and finally ended in a quite progressive mobility act for Berlin. So as you can see, when we started, we focused on biking infrastructure only. Then in 2020, there was a huge shift that probably had also to do with the pandemic. Because more and more people understood that public space is important, and it was more attention paid to public space in total. So there was also more things like play streets happening, or the pop-up bike lanes also came up during that time. So that was kind of the start for our campaign, for the Berlin Kiezblock campaign. We did lots of events where people could plan their own superblock in their neighborhood. This was shortly before the lockdown. Then afterwards we had to go online, but it still worked out well and people showed up. So I think to understand what has been key for us is that we as Changing Cities, we understood ourselves as a support structure for the activists, for the residents, and we tried to supply them with everything they needed to get active. That is why we wrote our How to Kiezblock. It's basically a step-by-step guideline on how to build up an initiative. And maybe one of the most important chapters in our How to Superblock is the one on the so-called Einwohnerantrag. I'm not sure how to translate it, but it's kind of a residents' referendum. And it gave the residents lots of power to build up pressure on the politicians. And of course, an important part for campaigning for superblocks was also taking it to the streets. Here, for example, in front of a city hall, or lots of initiatives also organized street parties in their neighborhoods. Well, that's how we came here. I think this is the core fundamentals, how we achieved to build up this movement. You probably might be asking yourself now how many of the 70 initiatives have actually been implemented. It's not 70, sadly. But at least 30 Kiez blocks have been approved by the district assembly, and around 5 have been implemented. So the question of implementation also leads us to the next, I would say, important chapter for our campaign, because we have more and more been confronted with the question of what exactly defines a superblock. So we just decided, let's write a document about it. We founded an expert group, and we wrote our second important document. It is called Recommendations for Superblocks. You can find it online. Yeah, last chapter for my story today. Beginning last year, we decided that we want to go further, and we launched a nationwide campaign. We organized a nationwide Superblock conference last November with people from 27 cities participating. You can see a picture here. And until today, we have around 30 initiatives all over Germany that are part of our network, and we're excited to go further. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. You can have a seat, of course. So is there any questions for the team of Changing Cities, maybe from the bench? Or from the parklet, actually, I should say.
No, I was just wondering, when you set people around the table to come up with a Kiez block plan, I think you tend to get people around the table who are in favor of certain kinds of changes. So, and once it becomes more realistic and it's going to happen, I'm sure there were a lot of neighbors that were disagreeing on the solutions of the Kiez blocks. And I was wondering, was there a confrontation between the neighbors in favor or against, or the people against targeting the administration or the politicians? So how did that go?
Well, I think something very, very important to understand that's very upfront is that like there have been a lot of initiatives for like calming streets, for like reducing noise, for making streets safer, and so on already like 10, 20, 30 years ago, and or for such a long time. The thing was that they were not connected at all. So something that we were starting at the very first was to like to look like do like a big research on all Berlin and have some kind of Kiez block agents that look into the 12 districts and find out who is already like active for safer streets and so on, which are in the end all like the same goals that you can solve with a Superblock or with a Kiez block. And so from there, like the initiatives were like started to like be consulted by us. And they, in the end, came up with their own kind of concepts. Like each individual initiatives in their location, they came up with their own kind of plan. So I think that already helped a lot because it was not top down, like from a kind of Berlin-wide organization, but it was like something that people like they knew about their own project or problems. Like so I think that already helped to make some kind of more like resonance with the needs that people have in their neighborhoods. And then like I think the next stage was then to really have this kind of local referendum. So already like collecting this 1,000 signatures or even more was something that helped a lot to like give people that think about Superblock as something that blocks out cars at all, like in the complete neighborhood, that things that you cannot access at all your place anymore with by car. I think that helped a lot to already trying to make like a gain understanding on a broader kind of sense to the neighborhood on the bottom up like perspective.
But there was never a tough opposition or.
Yeah, sure there was.
Valentina, you wanted.
There was, of course, there is. we need to be realistic, and there is confrontation happening. For example, in one Kiez, it's called Kaskel-Kiez, there's activists being assaulted by their neighbors. It happens, yeah. But I think through this process of collecting signatures, it's also a kind of engagement, and it helps to build up a dialogue between the neighbors. But it's not all happy and
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see two hands up now. We can take those two questions first in the front.
Hi, hello. Thank you for the presentation. I'm wondering, because unlike the previous ones, that they are all delivered by city authorities, you're coming with an NGO. And I guess that here the role plays or the dynamics are different. And you've already said about how the approach is very much bottom-up, how you facilitate gathering the signatures and pushing for change. But I'm wondering, as a kind of strategy, and your role in this active intermediation between the citizens and the authorities, if you can reflect a little bit on the pros, like the positive, what you think you can actually implement or how far you can get, and also NGO, like funding-wise, you know, is like, what is the sustainability of that approach in scaling up, for example, you know? Thank you.
Yeah, maybe in funding schemes, like currently we have, I think not yet, but our plan is to have 50% of our funding like by sponsors. So individual sponsors, don't have so many big sponsors, but it's mainly like people like you and me that are supporting our work. Secondly, like we have some third-party projects, like the Superblock project, that helped a lot and professionalize also our structure. So I think nowadays we have like something about 15 people in our office, not so some part-time as well, but that is helping a lot to really having this kind of core team that also helps to coordinate like all the engaged people around. So I'm, for example, not part of the office team, but I'm like a mobility planner and researcher. So I'm trying to like spend my my knowledge to the team. And we have like around of 1,000 people that are like in the broader team of engaged people in Berlin that are like very diverse in themselves. But I think that is a very important part of like having this kind of sustainability. So you, with like supporting initiatives in their field, you gain also people that then support other people, and I think that's something at our very core of how we are trying to bring knowledge as well, to have this knowledge exchange also between the initiatives. So it's not that always it should be they are coming to us and we are going everywhere, but it's very much also to like matchmaking between initiatives and people that have already experiences. For example, like we had in the pandemic, we have had like the Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg district, which became also very popular, like internationally, with the pop-up bike lanes, with the play streets. So they were piloting like the first project of Superblocks. However, like now like the political, even so the political party didn't change, but the councillor was changing, and now it's like quite blocked. So there's not so much going on anymore. But like the neighboring district Mitte now is like taking this kind of like pioneer position, but they are also learning a lot from like the one district to the other, and it's the same like for the initiative. So that is something I think very, very important.
Thank you very much. It's quite interesting also to see like who is active and who is engaged in changing cities. I had a few times I was already surprised, and with people from Berlin said like, you're also part of changing cities. It seems to be like the place where you can where you can sort of like be active and personally engage with developing the city further. It's quite remarkable that it's sort of Berlin-wide and very broad movement. Final question, please keep it short and concise, and then,
My question kind of connects to that. I was wondering what background Changing Cities has. Like the people in Changing Cities, are you planners, are you academics? And how you came into being, like was it out of activism or frustration in the like private field? Yeah.
Good question. Probably a lot of frustration about the bike infrastructure in Berlin, I would say. But also the belief that if we organize ourselves, we can change something, because otherwise we wouldn't do it. So I think all of us that are part of the paid team, as I am, or of the voluntary team, we believe that we can achieve something by organizing, by being strong together as a group.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's like something like, especially the bicyclists referendum was something that was coming very much from the frustration that there was a lot of evidence that things have to be changed, and there was some kind of fake participation about like there was like some kind of participation format where cyclists were asked about dangerous crossings, and I think 3 years later, even so, like there was a lot of data on which crossings were the most accident prone. Not really much happened. So 1 or 3 crossings were changed, but that was it more or less. And then it was like this possibility to have this kind of big referendum, and it really worked out. And I think we can say, luckily, we had like this kind of coalition at that time that didn't agree on just like taking over the bicyclist law, but there was like the criticism that it's just focusing on bicyclists, which I think is a very true criticism to make. So the like pedestrian lobby, they said, okay, we need also like a kind of pedestrian law, and then also like the public transportation agency said we need also something on that. So just because of that, that it came into this political process during like the elections, it was really transferred into this more holistic like mobility act that also defines like some very, very key values like the city planning should follow, like the Vision Zero, for example. And that, I think, was a very important cornerstone to then, in the end, like bring more people in that believed, okay, we can really change something without even being frustrated all the time, but more with like trying to bring more visions like to the city. So, and I think that's really what the Kiezblock movement in the end and also helped to transform like the Changing Cities initiative in itself, because it was not so much more like this kind of strong and fearless cyclists that was like on the base of the organization, but nowadays it's a lot of families and people that are younger. We are still lacking like the diversity that we are trying to also to embrace. But yeah, that's, I think, something that is a good development in this direction.
Yeah, thank you very much for those insights. It's remarkable to see that also the sort of the spatial concept you use, because it has more aspects. It can even broaden your institution or your organization. Thank you very much. So we are having the final spot reserved for the City of Vienna. Our next speaker, Lukas Franta, is a senior project manager at the Department of Urban Development and Planning for the City of Vienna, and he will tell us about the Superblock project of Vienna. Let's give him a round of applause. Yeah, and we'll just all stay in the parklet. We'll just snuggle up and make a new record of people who sit in there.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Lukas Franta. I work at the Department of Urban Development and Planning. And I work together with my team on the Supergrätzel Favoriten project, the first Superblock project, already for a couple of years. Is this the pointer? Okay. So maybe to give you some background, I heard that many of you have seen the Supergrätzel today in one of the tours. So I will start with some strategic framework. The Superblock projects in Vienna do have a strategic background, even though it's a pilot project, but they are anchored in different levels of Vienna's strategics or strategic documents. For example, the Climate City Strategy that sets out that Supergretl are one way to improve traffic safety, the Vienna Climate Guide as well, and they are mentioned in the coalition agreement of the current city government. When we speak about Supergretl in Vienna, so Supergretl is basically the translation into Viennese terms. Gretl means neighborhood in Viennese slang, so it's the super neighborhood. When we speak of Supergretl in Vienna, we think of it as more than just traffic calming. We think of it as a holistic tool that offers us a possibility to increase active mobility by changing public spaces, upgrade it, make it more livable, bring in more blue and green infrastructure, more trees, more greenings, and by that increase road safety or like traffic safety. And we see it as well as a tool to be able to create some neighborhood identity or strengthen the existing neighborhood identity. Now let's have a look at the pilot project. It's the first Superblock project in Vienna. You've been there today. This is an aerial view. You have seen it's a very dense, rather old neighborhood. It has a high density of buildings and residents. In the center of it is a school. It suffers from high heat stress. It's part of a big urban heat island. So there's definitely some cooling required. We needed to transform the street space in order to be able to provide an acceptable living environment for the residents there. And because there are several educational institutions in the center or spread out across the neighborhood, there's a big need to provide a safe environment for kids to go to school and back home. Further, this neighborhood was part of an urban renewal program focusing on social and ecological innovation. So this was kind of a window of opportunity that was used in order to get this project done. So in short, the goals were bring in more greenery into the street space, make it more livable, provide better public spaces for the residents, and reduce traffic. What has happened? In the pilot phase, there were different kind of spatial interventions. For example, on the top left picture, you can see road markings. These road markings were used to kind of show the public how much space there actually is in the streets where they live, but is not yet used for being sitting down or used as for greening or whatnot. It's just used as part of the road. It's kind of wasteful. So with these pink, colorful dots and markings, we try to show how much space there's actually to use or to reuse in a different way in the area. There were temporary public space elements like trees and bushes, but as well furniture to sit down and enjoy the kind of newly marked out spaces. And there was a street lab that I'm sure you have seen right in front of the school in the pedestrianized zone of Herzgasse. What's important to mention is that right from the beginning of this pilot phase of all the spatial interventions, the traffic organization has already been changed. So there were traffic diagonal filters in place, and through traffic was blocked except for cycling and pedestrians. This phase of spatial interventions lasted from June 2022 to September 23, so it basically half a year stopped. The street lab as well was kind of a hub to get into contact with the residents and interested people, but there were many more possibilities to start a dialogue about the project and get in touch with the residents on location. There were information events, we mentioned street lab, a street festival, and many, many guided tours, both for residents, but as well for planning experts and people from different city administrations around Europe. as we've heard today before, like a pilot project is always an opportunity to test out a new concept and to learn from it. And even during the pilot phase, we already did that, or tried to do that. On the bottom left picture, you can see a diagonal filter, how it was put in place in the beginning. And it was just a single bollard in the middle of the street crossing. Of course, this was not very effective, and some car drivers decided not to follow the street markings and just went straight through it or ran over the bollard, and it was gone. And sometimes it's very good as well if you can make use of kind of windows of opportunities or just coincidences. At the same time, last year in the summer, a different department of the city government got rid of their concrete garbage boxes from the Danube River. They were made of concrete so they can not flood away if there's high water. And they stood around just unused in some garage. And for us it was an opportunity to say, okay, we need something to improve the diagonal filters so they can actually work better. But we need to do it in a very cheap way, for us cheap way. And these garbage boxes, these concrete boxes, were just a great opportunity. So we took a few and put them up in the diagonal filters to improve them and make them actually work better. And even more, we could already bring in more green, because these are these big boxes. You can fill them up with soil and plant nice plants. So the whole process of the pilot project can be divided basically in 3 big phases. First was the development of the concept, just a conceptual or like the planning fundamentals, the preparation of the pilot phase, followed by the implementation of the pilot phase already with the new traffic organization and with participation processes going on. And since October 23, the redesign is actually starting. You've seen probably the construction sites on location. So that's the current status. And the construction is happening in 2 phases. The first phase is already underway and will probably be finished by fall this year, when the second phase follows, which will be done next year. The second phase is the one that's in the center, so this is all going to be pedestrianized around the school. Here you see a rendering of how it's supposed to look like. And of course, because piloting always is a phase of learning or trying to derive learnings on how this could be done in the future better if it's decided to be pursued, we do monitoring activities in order to be able to identify what could be done better. So some of our learnings, or what we already understood, is that if there is the political decision to pursue with Superblock projects in Vienna, we have to be ready to optimize some of the administrative processes in order to be able to deliver such big scale or large scale projects in a better way, which means a bit more smoothly. But we need as well to develop a criteria catalog for traffic organization and public spaces in order to outline the requirements and make them transparent. So when is a Superblock in Vienna or a Supergrätzl a Supergrätzl? What should be done and how could it look like? And we need to think about the potentials to do a step-by-step implementation. Right now it's done in one go, but this is a very large-scale project. It's very resource-intensive, so we have to think of, or at least look at ways how this could be done differently. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lucas. May I ask you to have a seat in the parklet?
Okay.
And we can have some questions, either if there is an immediate inter-parklet question for Lucas, or otherwise from the audience. There is, okay, Josie?
Yeah, for me, I was wondering, we've heard lots of experiences from, like we can tick a lot of boxes, there's lots of benefits. Is there some story of a neighbor or someone living there that still resonates with you and that makes you think, this is the reason why I'm doing this? Like a personal experience from a neighbor or a retailer?
When I'm in that neighborhood and I walk through the streets, I see them as being very bland, kind of empty. And when I see the vision, or think about the vision of the Superblock or what it could be in Vienna, I think it could just be so much nicer. And then in the Supergrätzl area, there's a tiny little park on one corner. And if you come closer to the park, you start to see much more people being there. So there is actually a need for being outside, or being able to be outside where it's nice, where it's maybe a little bit of shadow, where you can hang out, and all the other streets in the neighborhood cannot provide for that as they are right now. And I think this is a very big incentive on pursuing such a project and being able to provide these kind of spaces for the people that live there.
Okay, so audience question from the Ariadna, you want to say something?
I have another question, I'm very sorry. But no, it was actually fun to see today what it actually looked like before the first talks was you just saw the grid and now you're walking in it. But I was wondering, while looking at the grid again, that there are also neighborhoods just surrounding them. And I was wondering, do you get any remarks from those neighborhoods? It could be like a complaint that we often get is, well, you push away the traffic in those streets, but we get the extra traffic. Or we want that as well. Why are you planting trees over there instead of continuing extra Supergrätzl in the neighborhoods next to it? So I was wondering, do you have any signals or communication with the blocks surrounding this project?
We get a lot of requests about the Superblock project. But with those requests, we not always are able to get where they're coming from what neighborhood. But what we understood, or what was always or sometimes a point of concern, is being able to find a parking spot, or being able to get with the car. So this was an ongoing theme, but it kind of got less and less over time. The solution, or the traffic organization, is in place already for about 1.5 years now, and these kind of complaints are not that strong anymore.
Okay, there's one question from the audience.
Thank you very much for this yet another very interesting lecture. My question would be more around the multiplication effect of the Superblock in Vienna, because we've just now heard from Berlin that there's already been 70 of these Superblocks that have been kind of applied for by the public. But I was wondering whether there have already been requests from other districts in Vienna, or announcements of interest that they thought, this could be something for us. So how do you see the future of this, and have there already been other districts that said they would be interested in having such a project?
So there have been interests voiced by the district governments in the last years. But right now, the focus is on finishing the pilot project in Favoriten, and kind of think about what would be needed for another Superblock project if there is the decision that it's going to be pursued.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is there another question for Vienna from the international peers, or otherwise I have a question for you guys. We said that there is the need to change more rapidly, or to it was during your talk, Clyde, that you said like, yeah, you know, I do things at pace. First I was like, with my limited English, I was like, what does at pace mean? Cautiously with a slow pace, or just pacing? Yeah, okay, just pacing through basically. So what we are interested in is how can you create change or transformation as such, as we say. It's not necessarily a question for Clyde. It's for the whole parklet actually. But like, are there certain aspects of I would say in the widest sense administration or governance that allow us to do things quicker, or is it sometimes because the Vienna example can be interpreted also as a city that sort of like really looks at what it's doing, and then when it finally knows, okay, that's our approach to it, then they like roll out and do things for real. That's what I think is sort of the Viennese approach, quote unquote. You know, first be cautious, but then like roll it out massively. So what is your take on it?
So my answer as a politician is probably always going to be different to perhaps an activist, or perhaps even to an academic or a practitioner. So my apologies. But so nothing beats getting a really good scheme in on the ground first as an advert. This is what it could look like. Civilization will not collapse if we start putting people before cars on our streets. If we start putting more trees in our streets, civilization will not collapse. Businesses will not close down because you have decided to make your neighborhood look beautiful and a place where people want to spend time and money. Your business may close down because of the World Wide Web and the challenges in that particular place, but it won't be because you've changed for the better the look and feel of the local neighborhood. Data and evidence. Data is critical to be able to then prove the difference that you can make actually quite quickly and then over periods of time is really, really important to challenge those who will inevitably start saying that you are creating problems elsewhere. Because the data that you create will inevitably be positive. Less cars on a road, that's positive, that's good for air quality. Air quality improves. Local shops trading better, more people spending money locally, that's good. Children looking happier when they go to school because they are walking and skipping and running and scooting to school, and because they're getting that little bit of extra exercise built into their daily routine, they are more attentive in the classroom. They then get better exam results. You know, it's all of these things that start to make a difference. And then you haven't even touched on the climate emergency and what we actually have to do and be bold about if we're really serious at trying to make a difference and live with the planet that increasingly we have before us. So pace, getting a scheme in on the ground as an advert, data and evidence, and then start moving. Start on to the next scheme straight away.
Yeah, Ivo?
Yeah, maybe to add up, I think data is something super important. However, it has to be somehow translated into something people understand and feel as well. And I think that is something that we are as well as changing cities, we are not so good yet in really like having this also diversity inside of our own initiatives, right? So what we are seeing in Berlin, for example, we have this very nice environmental justice atlas. So we have like a nice system of layers, noise pollution, air pollution, green space availability, heat intensity, and the social index. And if we are putting like the initiatives that we saw on the map on top of this kind of layers that I just mentioned, it is sometimes overlapping, but it's often also not overlapping. So what we are seeing is there are people that cannot, try to engage for their own kind of rights or their own kind of necessities. So I think that is a gap where I think administration and politicians should play a much bigger role to really address these people that cannot fight for themselves. On the other hand, I think it's very important to go with the initiatives that have also the power to fight the way through together with administration and politicians, and somehow like build this kind of trust and this kind of partnerships that also, you know, that really, you know, there shouldn't be the approval afterwards having talked to the people in the place. And I think that is something that happened too often, and that frustrates people that could be your potential partners in the project. And I think that's something we tried to learn a lot with this tactical interventions Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg, and Mitte is now trying to follow up on this. But it's still like, I think there's a kind of generation change as well, and like new planners that are coming to administrations. But it's still quite they're not really the structures and not the processes to have these partnerships that really bring cooperation in the implementation phase. And maybe something else, I think what is very helpful on the ground, like working with initiatives that you really go away from this from this kind of framing of it's about the car. It's not about the car, it's about the people, it's about livability, it's about heat stress. And it's much easier if you just try to spread like your initiative work beyond just like the against car initiative or like the Superblock initiative. It's super helpful to work with initiatives that fight against rats, that fight against like trash, that is trying to bring more green into the neighborhood, and somehow try to actively to engage actively and positively for the neighborhood, and trying to team them up. I think that is something that helped a lot in some of the Berlin projects to really calm down those emotions. And looking at Vienna, I think you have quite interesting projects there as well with the Lokale Agenda, with the Gebietsbetreuung, that I could imagine become much stronger partners as well for the Superblocks concept to bring them somewhat from the bottom up and team them up with the top-down processes.
Yeah, do you want to answer or like there's not there is another question. Wait for the mic, please.
Yeah, so no, I mean, I really enjoy always Waffen Forest and what you've done, Clyde. But what I wanted to ask, it ties in with data, but also with people, is have, in any of your experiences with the different cities that we have on the parklet right now, kind of measured if essentially people are happier in those neighborhoods, they're more proud of living in those blocks, people have more social connections, people spend more time outdoors. Like, we can talk a lot about quantitative analysis, counting traffic, doing air quality, but have any of the cities in your examples measured, if people are happier living in those neighborhoods or something along those lines?
Anybody? Measurements on happiness?
But let someone else.
There is. I can answer for Vienna. There is a study on livability and quality of life, but the dimension or the size of the Superblock might be too small because they are like larger measurement areas. So that's in existing studies, and.
We have done a lot of studies of observational studies, so I don't know the level of happiness of the kids, of the children, but we ask in the school surroundings that all the streets that we have improved, with the school surrounding project, and the results are very clear, that they are more, the kids are playing more at the street, with that intervention than without that. I think that it will be significant for the children, but also for the parents, that are staying more time in the when the children go out of the school, they remain more time in that street than before. So I think also that it's data that that it means that the people spend more time in the public space, talking with each other, making that family networks that in some cases is so necessary. So I think that we have a lot of data to demonstrate that. That it's not easy to demonstrate happiness of the people, but I think that this little change of behaviors, all together, make maybe a change, And I feel, here is looking for all the audience, Maybe I am getting old, I don't know, but I feel that all the people is young, and you, and all the people that is involved in it, and that project is very young. You too. No, no, but I think that this is the answer. I think that the habits that we are used to have in our city, and the right of arrive to my home by car, this is changing, and we have. I think that it's the reason or the click, that we have to make in our cities, with the new generations, that will facilitate the scaling up of that policies that are very necessary, to change our habits. So I am optimistic. I think that we will win. Yes,
okay.
Get the challenge.
That's really good. So I don't know.
Can I just add?
Yeah,
just very briefly add to that. I mean, absolutely spot on. Anecdotally, I was standing outside a primary school, a very young children's school gate, as part of our political campaign last week, and it's on a school street that I've not been to, and it's where no one can drive in that street at the drop-off point and pick-up point of the day. So everyone has to kind of walk or cycle or scoot or wheel into it. I've not been there since we'd introduced the scheme. I was absolutely overwhelmed by the huge numbers of people cycling, scooting and walking, but not just on the pavements. They were flowing down the roads, and some of these roads were really long. They had taken ownership of that road. They were using that space to enjoy their trip to school in the morning. And what else? Parents were then gathering in the road space after they'd dropped them off. They just felt comfortable in that space. So that kind of sense of community cohesion that you also get when you take out excess traffic from a neighborhood, I think is also really, really powerful. And the other very brief anecdote that I get when we introduce new schemes quite often is an email that says something along the lines of, "Thank you, I can now hear the birds sing." That's the difference that you make.
Yeah, thanks very much. So celebrate successes and also initiate other projects with this. There was one question. 2 questions from the audience. Third one.
I have a question in regards to some of the other, like the economic impacts of superblocks. So some critics might say that superblocks or low traffic neighborhoods lead to gentrification or increase in rent prices, property value, obviously because we're now kind of creating a more desirable place to live. So my question is, one, have you experienced this in some of the cities that you all work in? And then secondly, what are some measures that can be taken so that superblocks don't, I guess, become that, and that the focus really is on the climate and livability aspect?
In the case of Barcelona, we have made these studies, but not only with superblocks, but also with the project that we have made 10 years ago or 15 years ago for streets, pacificated street. And we compare the prices of the flats between that streets and the neighbors, the difference of the prices. And we find that they are only between 2% or 5% difference. So it's not that idea that we have, not that green gentrification, or it's not like that, I think, at least in Barcelona. The reason, unfortunately, is because the gentrification is happening in the whole city. So it doesn't matter, no, if you are in a green street or not. It's the same. And it cannot increase more because the people cannot pay more. So it's not a good question. The thing that we find is that in the shops, there's a difference, no? Yes, it is increasing 20% the prices of the shops than the other ones. So in that case, yes, we have like commercial gentrification. So that's why we are doing plan de usos, uses planning, no, in order to avoid restoration activities, no, in that kind of streets. But I think that idea, no, it's a little bit dangerous, no, because we cannot stop to improve our cities, no. So I think that gentrification is a complex, very complex phenomenon, and I think that it's not so not so direct, the relationship between the green or the Pacific superblocks or with the gentrification. There are a lot of policies to decrease that effect also that are not improving the public space, no. So I think that I don't like very much that link that it's over in all the meetings is rising up. So it's a worry that it's logical, but I think that we have to explain, no, that the reasons are more complex, and we cannot stop to improve our neighborhood, no, because I think it's like a dangerous idea, no, not to avoid doing nothing, no.
I would like to add something. I think it's a reality, the problem of gentrification, but I think maybe a little bit like Ariadne, it would be strange to have to choose between problems to solve. I think if you would compare it, for example, if you have the success of growing numbers of cyclists, well, you raise new problems because the cyclists take up space as well. So you have to find new solutions for that. The answer is not, oh no, let's reintroduce all the cars and push away the cyclists. That's not the solution to that. And with Superblocks, it's a solution for a number of problems. It improves life quality. It creates more green and enjoyment of life, and creates some new challenges such as gentrification. But I think it's something to work on and reflect within the city administration and with politicians to look how can we find creative solutions to deal with those problems without sacrificing the previous goals that we wanted to achieve. So I think I don't want to choose between traffic safety or avoiding gentrification. I think we need complementary solutions to grow towards better cities. I think that's how I look at it.
Yeah, thank you. This is really, really important discussions. And I suggest that we smoothly go towards the informal part of the evening. There is 2 more questions from the audience before we then have our final reflections, first by women, then by Josie. So, sorry, so first question, please.
Okay, I'll just talk like this. So thank you very much for the cities for introducing us to all the different strategies. I thought it was really interesting to hear what's going on in each city differently. My question would go rather to Berlin and also to Vienna, because you both mentioned as motivation for the superblocks also the bike infrastructure, or the improvement rather of bike infrastructure. And I also work in the mobility sector, and obviously I'm also a biker, so very happy about every new bike lane that is being made. However, I'm also a pedestrian, and for me, it's rather the question if superblocks are really the best way to promote new bike infrastructure, because I think superblocks actually represent something else that are rather for living quality and also to spend more time outside as a pedestrian, but also perhaps as, I don't know, a family, or for playing grounds, or for just sitting outside and reading a book. And as I said, I'm also a cyclist, but I know how cyclists can or tend to focus on getting somewhere fast. So yeah, that would be my question.
Coming from a cycling country, I would like to reflect on your question. I believe that superblocks are part of the solution, but investment in cycling infrastructure is a different thing. We need designated bike lanes, we need a proper network coming from A to B. It is about going to your work, but also in recreational terms. In the Netherlands, we nowadays see a conflict between cyclists and pedestrians. And for example, I work for the city of Rotterdam, but I live in Utrecht, which is more or less the cycling capital of the world. It's crazy out there, and it's anarchy. So I'm volunteering as a cycling teacher, and the pupils, it's mainly women that don't know how to ride a bike, that didn't learn it like we did when they were young, and they are just scared to go out on the streets. So in the city center, we now decided in Utrecht to do this kind of cycling hours during peak hours for walking. It's not allowed to cross the city center. So we need to be really agile on that as well. And it is specific in different neighborhoods. It's different in a city center and in a neighborhood where we do want to stimulate people to bike. And I mean, you are a cyclist, but as soon as you park your bike, you become a pedestrian.
Thank you.
If I can add for the case of Vienna, in Vienna, cycling needs to be strengthened, and what's done in the Superblock project in Favoriten is taking out speed from traffic. If you're as a pedestrian on the street or trying to cross the street, there's a big difference if a car is coming towards you or a cyclist, in terms of if there is a collision, it will have vastly different outcomes. And the outcomes are much less severe, of course, if people are cycling. And the cycle traffic is compared to probably pedestrian traffic in the neighborhood much lower. So yes, I understand the concerns, and if the cycling numbers go up strongly, you need to find a different solution for the infrastructure. But as it is, I think it's an okay compromise between the modes that you find there.
Okay, we have to move on to the last quick question.
Hi, thank you. I have a very specific question regarding the data on businesses, because you said it helped local businesses and the local economy. Maybe Clyde can answer, but also others. Which specific data did you gather for that, and how did you get it? Because I think it's a challenge we're facing.
So my data on the economy is very anecdotal, and it's what I see. I think you mentioned data on retail sales, didn't you? So for me, it's visual. You just see it. You see, on a Saturday and a Sunday in the evening, you see this huge influx of people into Orford Road, into Francis Road, where we've taken out that through traffic. I see people enjoying those shops and spending, not just going for the loaf of bread, but actually stopping, having a coffee, meeting friends, and actually spending quality time, allowing their children to run around in that space that is now car-free, because they feel safe and comfortable in doing it. So it's more anecdotal for me, because English businesses tend to be a little bit more secretive. There's some Transport for London data, though, that kind of gives an indication of how low traffic neighbourhoods improve the retail spend. I could probably dig a link out and send it to you, and it can be circulated.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll build out the tuneourblock.eu website also in the next weeks, or as a knowledge hub for a lot of the stuff that was shared here, for a lot of our results and etc. So visit it again, and of course, if you want to share something, we can always make that available. So the last 2 minutes now for the two reflections, first from Wim and then from Josie, to conclude the evening. So please.
I will stand up for the final. No, you don't want that. You don't want that. No, well, I have 3 points I want to make. Well, we've heard a lot of stories from different cities. The approach was different. The results were a little bit different. The tactics were different. Sometimes it was a heavy struggle. Sometimes you could have done things differently. But not only in Europe, but all around the world, similar projects have not heard of one example where they said, oh no, we were completely wrong. The goals that we wanted to achieve, we were stupid. Not one. It's about looking for the best way to achieve it, but it's the right direction. I have a very strong belief in that, and the way to do it, well, it will change all the time. I'm certain of that. Second thing is that it's not only about the people that are living in our cities right now, about complaining neighbors or shop owners or yourself or your colleagues. It's also about future generations. So if a personal anecdote from my perspective, I have 3 children there. They're all adults right now, and the way that they meet with friends in the city, it's very different from what opportunities we had. Though they meet in nice places, they were full of cars, and now they're nice places, and it's the new normal, and we do it for them as well. And so that's very important. And if you're talking about numbers, well, the drop in traffic accidents in places where you install that's massive. That's you can't compare it to other things. And one final remark maybe is that sometimes when you're working on a project and you're confronted with angry mobs, that you can feel very lonely. But well, we're looking around here, then it's not a lonely battle. It's a lot of people who share the same belief, I think, as I do, and it's the way to go. I'm very sure of that, and I think there will be plenty more examples, great examples in the near future.
I agree with Wim. Let's go for a drink.
A quick round of applause.
Just joking. Looking to your slide, we've been talking a lot about actions. It's also referring to the urban actors. And Valentina, she said, if we organize ourselves, we can actually change things. And I believe that change happens in collaboration. We, from the civil servant perspective, the political perspective, but also from the bottom-up initiatives and the activists in our city. And I truly believe that if we collaborate on all those levels, we can actually make things happen. Now let's go for a drink.
Great. So thank you very much for this evening, and we meet tomorrow again for the networking session that we are calling People of Superblocks, so we can get even more in depth during the International Superblock meeting. So a big round of applause for everybody, and thank you.